Hi, welcome to Exercise for Beginners, where I teach people who are just starting out where to start out. This week, I'm going to cover a little more in depth the type of squat you should be starting with, depending on what your form looks like. So I'm going to go over a little bit about how to kind of test yourself and like just some big red flags to look for, and then a couple modifications that you can do to either improve upon that form a little bit, or just make it a little bit easier. So I'll try and give a handful of suggestions for that. Squatting is one of those things that is just a heavily used movement pattern throughout our lives, right? We use it to sit down into a chair, go to the bathroom, pick stuff up off the floor. It is a very functional, everyday movement pattern. This is something we see in babies when they start walking, right? They just plop right down, no problems. They just easily sit into a squat. You see videos on it all over the internet, right? Um, Unfortunately, the modern lifestyle kind of takes away from that movement pattern, right? With too much sitting, we all lead slightly more sedentary lifestyles than we really should, and then what we're designed for. So that being said, we can kind of lose that range because it's not something that's required in day-to-day life as much as civilizations and times before us. So keeping that in mind, we want to make sure that you're adding in the movement pattern into your regular exercise routine. Um, but just because it's something that we're supposed to be able to do, it doesn't mean we all do it well. I don't mean to say that it's not possible or that you suck at it. Um, but that is just to say, be mindful about what you're doing and check in with where your squat is at, because long term, you might be adding extra stress to an improper movement pattern, which could lead to issues. So I just want to teach you how to kind of look at it a little bit critically, so you can say to yourself like, oh, okay, like maybe I should be a little bit more mindful, so that my posture is a little bit better going into this squat and I'm not dumping all of this load into my knees or into my lower back. So before I show you and give you some examples, a few of the common things that I see with my clients is when they go down to squat, uh, they lean forward quite a bit. So they kind of bend over at the hips a lot more than they should, and their chest is facing the floor quite a bit. You do want to keep your upper body as upright as you can. Another factor is like, do you have tight ankles? If you're someone that has particularly tight ankles and you can't get your knees past your toes, that's a sign that it's going to be difficult for you to just sit straight down into that squat. Now, there are things you can do about that, but that's a completely different video. But no, if tight ankles is your issue, you can stretch them out, but it will take quite some time. A simple fix for that is typically you can just raise your heels onto like a platform. Or myself, I squat with squat shoes, right? I used to have really tight ankles. I stretched them as far as I could bear to go. They're a lot better, but I just need those shoes. But I'm good with that. That's a small compromise. Um, One of the other things that it needs to be taken into account is your anatomy. The reason some people can kind of just plop down, no problem, is they're very evenly proportioned. Upper body to femur to tibia. It's all very, evenly distributed. And you know what? That's just luck of the draw. Some of us have longer femurs. That is a big factor that goes into how upright are you going to be able to be? What does normal look like for you versus what normal looks like for somebody who is more evenly distributed? Neither squat is wrong. It's just important information and something to look at to know what is right for you, right? If you're someone where your lower leg and your upper leg are roughly the same length, you should be able to sit more upright in a squat, right? If you're not, then it's just something that there's other things to work on. But if you have a longer upper leg, there's a good chance you're going to have a little bit more of a tilt, and that's totally fine. As long as it's not stressing you out, And as long as your chest literally isn't facing the floor, that's fine. We can, look at other angles at that point. Another thing I see quite often is a lot of times people just like cannot bend their knees any further. Like they feel like they're going to fall over. They don't feel very supported. Sometimes some of that just comes down to strength, right? They haven't used that full range in a really long time. So they've kind of lost it. At that point, it comes to using supportive variations of squats or wall sits to help you reconnect with that depth. It might take some time. It might be a little uncomfortable along the way, but it can be regained, or at least some of it. So you're not too far gone. I will say some of the hiccups that can come with that, whether it's tight ankles or you just genuinely haven't used your full range of motion in a long time, it can bother the knees to start using it again. So I suggest going about it very slowly. There's a good chance you might hit a little bit of a tendonitis roadblock along the way. As long as it doesn't get too uncomfortable, just proceed little by little, right? It might be something you have to work through, so don't freak out. It is a very normal part of the process, albeit it is one of those uncomfortable things that can come with the process. But it's not a reason to panic. It's part of the game. I have had one or two clients that have had that hurdle where they do hit, that point in time where they get a little bit of tendonitis, but we move about things pretty slowly. I don't progress people super quickly until I can notice that it starts getting easier or they can hold certain positions for a lot longer. It's not just about, increasing that full range of motion. It's also about getting the knees used to that depth, right? So you don't need a lot of weight yet until you can kind of comfortably get up and down. I don't use weights with people for months if I don't feel they're ready, and that's totally fine. There's no issues with that. And going about things more slowly also helps the brain adapt to working that full range of motion, and it helps to strengthen the tendons in the knees, right? We want strong knee tendons, right? We don't want tears, we don't want replacements, we don't want to go through that. That's a pain in the neck. It's super painful. Nobody wants to experience that. So take things slowly, build up that tendon strength. You can add weight eventually, right? Improve your range first, add weight later. Just know if you do hit that little bit of a tendonitis hiccup, stay the course. Don't progress any further. Just kind of stay where you're at until that goes away. And it will go away. Probably a few weeks to, a month or two. I know it's not the best answer, but ultimately, don't stop what you're doing. Just kind of pause where you're at. If it's too uncomfortable, maybe take it back a notch. But continuing the activity is better than not doing it at all. All right, next I'm going to show you a few ways to modify that squat to give you a little bit of support to help you gain that range of motion. Okay, so we're going to start with what is called an overhead squat assessment, right? So this is just to help you gauge where your squat is at and what you might need in order to improve it. In order to do an overhead squat assessment, you're technically supposed to put your arms overhead and then sit straight down into a squat. So I'm going to tell you a couple of things we're looking for. When you're doing a squat, you're looking for a few things. You're looking for your tibia, your lower leg, and your spine to be on a parallel plane when squatting. So like when you're at the bottom, you want that angle to be exactly the same, right? Now, that's a little rigid, based off of the anatomy piece with the femur I told you before. But just know if you're way off from parallel, right? Like this is your tibia and your upper body's like this, then there's definitely something to work on, and that should be a red flag to you, right? So they should be relatively parallel within 15, 20 degrees, just depending on your anatomy. Second thing, do you have a decent bend in the knee? Is it around 90 degrees? You also hear this term 90 degrees parallel to the floor. That means We're looking for about 90 degrees at the knee. We're also looking for that thigh to be parallel to the ground. So your upper leg and the floor are parallel, right? So I like to use that a little bit more as a guideline, like the thigh being parallel or as close to it, because I feel that's a better indicator and it's not quite as stringent as the spine lower leg one. So what I see a lot of with squats is people will do that, right? So from here, I have no ankle flexion. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, is there an issue with the ankles where they can't sit down? I have a lot of pressure in the lower back here. My chest is essentially facing the floor, and you can tell that because my arms fell, right? Can't keep my arms up. So this is what we don't want. You know, we also are nowhere near that upper leg being parallel to the floor. So I usually see like a variation of that. Sometimes I see it a little lower, and people will be like here, but they're still pretty bent over, right? So something's happening around the midsection for me that kind of screams, I don't know if that's gonna work long term. You know, it's great that they can get the depth, but now I'm concerned, like, I'm afraid to add weight because I don't want to hurt you. So if you have books at home, about 1 inch to 2 inches, you know, play with the height. You might need a different height depending on where you're at. This is the first thing I check, right? If placing your feet on a riser of any kind helps your upper body to stay upright, there's a couple things that may be happening. It could be because your ankles are tight, and the reason you can't sit into the squat is because you can't move your ankles. Or it could be, you know, in tandem or solo with that upper leg, right? Maybe your femur's longer. You know, maybe you need that lift to kind of compensate for that length difference. Either way, it doesn't really matter. But if you sit here, and now all of a sudden we're down here, way better, right? You sit into it, I get very low, but I'm looking for right about there, right? You're sitting in a very low chair. All right, if you do that and that doesn't really change anything, we might be looking at purely a strength perspective, right? It could just be you don't have the strength to sit all the way into it, and that is what it is, and we'll give you some modifications to get you to that full depth. The next option you can use in order to help with your squat depth is doing a supported squat against the wall. So I have a foam roller available right now, but you can also do this with one of those big like stability balls, one of those like bouncy yoga balls as well. It's the same thing. Some might find the ball to be easier than the roller, but it makes no difference which one you use. So you're going to place the roller behind your lower back. All right, actually, let me take this off. When you do this, you're going to lean into the wall a little bit, right? So you're kind of going back at an angle into the wall. You want your feet out in front of you, hands out in front of you too. You're going to come down, get to that depth, and come all the way back up. You want to grab the floor with your feet. Push up with your whole foot, not just the ball of your foot, not just your heel, the whole foot firmly planted. All right. If you feel like you're dumping into your knees, now what does that feel like? That means your pressure on your feet is leaning towards your toes, right? Like you have all the weight of your body in your toes, right? When we're doing anything, squats, deadlifts, split squats, whatever, you want your weight evenly distributed. You want a firm grasp on the floor with your whole foot, right? So as far as a little bit of anatomy goes, if you are dumping your weight into the ball of your foot, that's going to be very quad heavy. You're overusing your quad. That's part of the reason your knee hurts, right? You're using all the front of your leg and nothing in the back, or not as much in the back. So when you shift some of that weight into your heel, now we're getting more hamstring and we're getting more glute, right? When we get more hamstring and glute, we're getting more support. We're taking some of the stress off the quad, which then takes the stress off the knees. So if knees is an issue with your squat, it could very well be because of where the weight is at when you're pushing up, right? Is it up here, or using your whole foot? And are you using the back side of your leg as well, your hamstring and your glutes? Oftentimes, you need to use the glutes more. So if you're doing those squats and they're still a little tough, so far we have heel supported or heel lifted squats. We have foam roller or exercise ball supported squats. Those are all still tough or not quite getting you where you need to be. I would suggest starting off with a wall sit. I suggest starting everyone off with a wall sit. It's great for learning that depth, but it's also really good for helping to build that strength in your knees and thickening your tendons, right? We want knee strength. We want that tensile strength. It gives us extra support. So from here, you want to find your depth and you want to hang out here for as long as you can. Ideally, you'd like to be able to do a minute, all right? If you can't do a minute, that's fine. Start with 10 seconds, 15, 20, go up. Keep doing it until you can get to a minute. The next couple of things I would suggest would be doing a split squat, just a hold, or for reps, again, supported, or doing step-ups. So for a split squat, I like to have people start from the ground, right? If you're struggling doing squats, you're probably having a hard time getting off the floor. I want you to be able to get off the floor. So if you need some support, I got my cat tree here, have it next to you. There's nothing wrong with support. Work your way up to not needing support, right? So you have your support, your knees in front of you here. You're at a little less than 90 degrees, maybe 80, 75. And you're on the ball of your foot in the back. So with a split squat, you're pressing up evenly with both feet, right? So from here, you're going to come up and down, up and down. Like I said, you have your support. You can have support on both sides. Part of improving is also getting your brain to reconnect to the whole movement, right? Our brains are super smart and super stupid at the same time. So unfortunately, they take the path of least resistance, which means they will cut out movement patterns if it has to, which sucks. But retraining is key here. So again, up, down, up, down. If that's still too hard, fine. Hold, 2, 3, down. Hold, 2, 3, down. Do little pauses. You don't even have to go up all the way, right? Just little pauses, get that initial oomph off the floor. All right, from there, if that's tough, you could also try just like stepping up all together, right? This would be more of a lunge. So up, down, up, down. So with this one though, it might be a little tougher. All that weight and all that work's going to be on the front leg. So really depends. Everyone's different. Everyone's body responds differently to different stimuli. That's why I give a bunch of options. The last one we're going to talk about is doing a step up. So for a step up, you'll want something sturdy. You can start with maybe 12 inches. I like to work people up to doing 16 minimum. That's the height of like what, 2.5 stairs. And I think it is do more than you have to so that you never struggle with the day-to-day. That's kind of my philosophy. So I have an ottoman here. So with a step up, again, if you need support, grab a PVC pipe or a cane, whatever you need. You're gonna step up and back down. Up and back down. Now the key with step ups, especially on the way down, you want to control up and down. Step ups are a great tool for gaining the strength to help with squats, right? So one of the issues we have with squats a lot of times is strength, right? We need to regain that strength. You're not going to do that just by doing squats. You're going to do that by also working on your single leg strength. You hate lunges, you hate split squats, Bulgarian split squats for a reason, because they're hard. And they're hard because you haven't been doing them, but you need them. That's how we get off the floor. That's how you bend down to get something, right? That's how we sit. We go to the bathroom. Single leg strength is just as important, and it will help you in getting into that deeper squat and make everything more comfortable. I know it sucks, but it does help, and it will suck less once you feel more confident about it and once you start to gain some of that strength back. I promise. I used to hate single leg stuff myself, and I just did it more. You're right. I tell myself if I hate it, it's because I'm not good at it. And if I'm not good at it, I need to do it more, right? So just keep doing it, and you'll get stronger, and you'll be able to do more. Thank you for joining me this week on Exercise for Beginners. I hope it was helpful, and I hope you learned a few ways to help get you to the squat goals of your dreams. Stick with it. I know it's tough. Subscribe to my channel if you're looking for guidance on where to start if you're just starting.